we were talking yesterday about this Brandon quote on
Yes,
his inner
I
demon.
remember it. Yeah, the inner
I
demon tosser thing.
I actually found the quote that I was telling you about that I thought was relevant, which was this thing at the top.
Yeah, what's that from again?
It's from his 6 pillars of self-esteem, which I
Okay.
thought was interesting because it sort of ties
Yeah.
into when we know we are doomed. Not this. It ties into people choose to be right rather than be happy. And a man knows that his destiny is not to be happy. And
Yeah.
there is a dissonance between our knowledge and perceivable facts. Since our knowledge is not to be doubted or questioned, it is the facts that have to be altered, hence self-sabotage. That I thought that sort of related because that would explain why you might get someone who feels, as at least as he's describing here, why you turn away from facts, because it's very uncomfortable to feel, I don't know what the root of the loss of control is, but maybe there's an emotional level that someone like feels, okay, well, there are facts here, they go against what I believe and know. And so there's a sense in which you're out of control. Maybe it's so vague, but like there's something to that.
I mean, I try to think though if I've ever witnessed someone actually say that they've deliberately done something to go against them, or deliberately done something to cause themselves suffering, to cause self-sabotage. I mean, I get what he's saying, but I'm trying to think if I ever really seen that in actuality. I understand the reasoning that people like control, but would they actually do that?
I guess his answer would be, on a conscious level, they wouldn't, until it would be in retrospect when they've already changed. They wouldn't tell you that.
Yeah, and I don't think that would make sense. I mean, based on what I understand about human behavior, I don't think anyone would really do that. I don't think anyone self-sabotages. Like, we could describe it as self-denying sometimes, but it's not self-sabotage. I mean, they might do something out of denying themselves. I think people actually believe that they aren't worth something good, so they deliberately avoid giving themselves something good. I think that's often more the case. I mean, I kind of disagree with Brandon's what I'm saying. I get why people would why they sometimes pick something, one viewpoint over another, but I don't know if anyone actually self-sabotages. I think people generally seek or give themselves what they think they deserve. And if they think they deserve nothing, then they give themselves nothing. If they don't think they deserve happiness, to make sure that they don't get happiness. I think that's usually what happens.
That's what I took the passage to stand for, though. That's what all those examples are about. Like, he'll talk about someone who ends a relationship early, or about someone who finds a way to destroy a relationship, or someone who gets a promotion at a job and then finds a way to screw it up. Because he says it's your situation, except the difference is that the circumstance changes, suddenly you're rewarded with something which does not fit into your perception of yourself. So your situation, you don't think you deserve something, so you don't go for it. But what if you're given it? What happens to your psychology then? I think that's what he was talking. That's my impression. And he's saying, so it's your situation, plus you're then given something which counters your knowledge of your own self-perception.
I guess I was just disagreeing with the word self-sabotage.
Right.
I mean, self-sabotage seems to me to note that you wanted one thing, that you want something, but subconsciously you're giving yourself the opposite. The way I see it is that you consciously see yourself not deserving, and so you give yourself what you deserve, which isn't sabotage as much as self-harm, I guess you could say, or self-punishment is how I would describe it personally. Like, yeah, if you don't deserve, if you don't deserve, you have a relationship, you'll just decide, I'll end it, not because you're sabotaging, your desires, but that your desires, in fact, to have no values. That the desire is, in fact, that you desire to punish yourself. You desire to take away your values from yourself, is kind of how I see it, rather than say that you desire the good on the conscious level, but subconsciously you act against it. I think they're actually in harmony generally.
All right, I'll channel Brandon and say that that's true, but people are often contradictory and hold a lot of mixed premises. So they can strive to be, they say they want to be great at their job, but on a subconscious level, they don't believe that they deserve this. They don't, let's just go, they don't believe they have the ability to be. And so they'll take certain conscious actions that are congruent with their conscious belief, but then sometimes they'll take actions when they're not as thinking that are incongruent with their belief, and it results in that destruction. Like he gave the example of the person who is given a promotion and all this self-responsibility, which he said he wanted, but then he just one day got really drunk and like started abusing the person who promoted him. So he lost the position. And he gave that as an example. And so, yeah, maybe he'd say something like that, you know, he can consciously want it on a certain level, but if he doesn't subconsciously believe it, and then he doesn't bring consciousness to all the different little actions he's taking, he will be inclined to take self-sabotaging actions. That self-sabotaging in terms of conflicting with some other already contradictory elements in his personality, like the consciously specified desire to get a promotion or whatever it is.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid interpretation. I don't quite agree, but I think that's the analysis. That's the right way to analyze it. That those are the right questions, and those are the right counterpoints, I think. I mean, I could pursue that topic more if you want, but
yes,
as far as the method and demonstration, I think that's entirely appropriate and what you should do. That's the proper method.
Let's pursue it, because it's making sense to me now what he's saying. I'm like, oh, okay, this does fit with my understanding of objectivism and philosophy. But so where do you think it's going wrong?
Well, I think where it's going right is the fact that you're right to note that the contradiction people have sometimes, that even that we can't even always be aware of all of our premises at once, that there could be that subconscious operation going on, those habituated parts, while our rational deliberation is going on. And those things could conflict. And I think that's where Brandon is coming from. And that there can be this conflicting emotions here between deliberation and the underlying emotion, and they will go against each other. One being that acting on self-judgment as negative, and the other as something that seeks something for itself that's good. But the difficulty I find in that is, how is it that you could have some subconscious thing that self-sabotages if the subconscious is built out of deliberately chosen values and ideas? It would seem that at the least it would just still be a different cup of value you're seeking, that it wouldn't self-sabotage, it's just seeking some particular value, that it sees itself as deserving something that's derived from what you deliberate as true.
Isn't it similar though to, I just had this thought now, sort of like when you learn philosophy, you can learn some basic principles, but to integrate them with your actions, your choices, your life as a whole is a very difficult and slow process. So similarly, if you hold contradictory premises, like you profess consciously you want this, but subconsciously you believe you don't deserve it, the process of then attaining it is very difficult, because you have to resolve those conflicts in a very, like you'll have to analyze all kinds of decisions and bring consciousness to them, because otherwise what the scenario he's describing is what's going to play out. You'll sort of, it's bizarre, but you'll sort of like half go towards some goal, but then half try and self-destruct the subconscious part of you. But it's not a fatalistic in the sense that you can still bring consciousness to it. It's not like through one perceptive insight, like one of Aquinas's angels, you suddenly identify all actions relevant to attaining that goal. It's more like there are, at any given moment, there's always choices in front of you. And some of them, if you are more used to acting on emotions, will be the self-destructive ones in the case of this person who split. What about that as an interpretation then?
I think that's where you're going right. That's what I was trying to say, that you can't hold all of your knowledge at once immediately and always be aware at all seconds of every consequence of your ideas. I mean, that will happen. There will be contradictions at times. That's sensible, and it is sensible that you would have a dissonance sometimes. That's almost unavoidable because you'll miss things sometimes. It's not a big deal, but it happens. The issue comes in, I think, when could you have two kind of subconscious process really go towards the opposite of your values? I see it could go a different direction, maybe an irrational direction, but which is anti-life, but it almost seems like a deliberate, is more direct path to self-destruction. And I'm skeptical that a subconscious process could be so wholly destructive. I could see it as irrational, but not in a way that it's actually destroying your values directly. It's almost just like a looking the other way is how I see it, more than a deliberate, I'm going to cause harm. That's usually how I see this sort of subconscious process.
Right.
And Brandon seems to be suggesting that that this subconscious process in some instances will be immediately destructive, and actually immediately destructive of your values, not over time, but rather right away.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. Cool. I get it. That I would say that would be, based on my new interpretation of this after the discussion, that would be a minor point, because it's like you could have this relationship, right? And it's not like you take an action where it would most intelligently and quickly destroy the relationship, but the subconscious process being there and being irrational and being destructive in the sense that it's not taking you towards your goal. It believes you have a lower sense of worth. You're going to be taking actions which over time undermine whatever it is you're consciously professing to aim at.
Yes, I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
All right. Well, suddenly his statement, which at first actually I got annoyed by because I don't like that whole idea of we've got all these magical subconscious programs running that have their own intelligence. But with this new interpretation, it makes sense, right? It's not going to be good. Just like in economics, I was reading, what is it, that book you recommended and other people recommended?
Economics in One Lesson.
Yeah, he talks about how really bad public policies that are fallacious are never implemented in full to their logical conclusion, but it's enough that they do already some destruction. And he gives the example of, like, technophobes getting angry at what they call automation, which is labor-saving devices. And to follow their argument to the logical conclusion would mean you get rid of trains, you get rid of everything so men could carry stuff on their backs and you could create more employment that way. But you don't need to go all the way in that direction to already cause some destruction, right? So I think it's similar. Right. There's a similarity here in human psychology where what he's talking about with the examples he gives is like, I guess you'd have to read into it. It's like the interpretation. You have to say, okay, it's not like my subconscious is magically finding the best way to destroy this work or business or relationship. It's more like there's a constant grading at, in a negative sense, in a destructive sense, of the success I'm professing to want.
Yeah. An erosion, gradual erosion.
Right. And that requires a lot of consciousness. Oh, I'm stirring a cup. Sorry. Yeah. So it's like a gradual erosion, like you said, rather than, okay. Cool. That makes sense. That's hard, because you can imagine, like, there are so many discrete choices you make. And that would mean, if you do believe that you have some kind of self-destructive or unhelpful self-image, or a subconscious premise, as he talks about, like, you'd have to be doing a lot of introspecting. That would be quite painful, I imagine, because there's so many ways this thing could come up.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you could go wrong. There's more ways to go wrong than right, if you think about it. Like, if there's one right answer but 5 wrong answers, like, there's 5 wrong ways to do something for sure, but there's not always as many good answers.
Right. Aristotle says that in Nicomachean Ethics.
Yeah.
To hit the mark, he talks about like archery, hitting the mark is harder than
Hitting the
you can
mark. Yes.
shoot anywhere else. Yeah.
That's really what this is about. Like hitting the mark is what you want, but any other way is like a gradual erosion. Like you go the right way, or any other way is gradually harmful.
Right. Okay. All right. So we've actually clarified quite a bit. The choice to be right is actually, well, I think this is like just some kind of psychological generalization. It's not a rule or anything,
Yes.
but he's observed that people seem to prefer some sense of control over like, facing new facts where it feels a bit less clear and it's more unknown and it's scary. That's as much justice as I can do this idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is written like, when did he write this book? Was it like, was it 95 actually?
I don't know. Yeah. Six Pillars was one of his latest ones,
But even in the past 15 years, been huge amount of developments in psychology. So that's what you should consider as well.
Oh,
I mean,
you
it's
did
great
mention
for his
that.
time, but yeah, there's been a lot of developments, especially in this domain.
What can you think? Give me an example of something that
Well, like
sheds
more
insight on-
cognitive psychology, a lot more cognitive psychology since then, as in like terms of like what are the underlying processes in the mind, the brain, or even different methodologies of considering how, like cognitive biases and things like that. There's a lot of research into that, and when people fail to reason and things like that, or in what
I see.
ways they reason that are odd or different,
Right.
which would apply to even like how they deal with their emotions
Right.
as well.
Right. Okay. Like an example
Like-
would be, I feel a certain way. I feel angry, and so I'm looking for injustices. Whereas I'm less. My brain is less triggered to look for actual acts of justice, something like that, right?
Yeah, biases like that, which has been a lot of research in that the past 20 years, especially like cognitive dissonance, which Brandon's describing here. There's a lot more into that as well.
Right. Is there any of it that's, Brandon seems quite practical, right? Is there any of it
Yes.
that's tethered to applications in any?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I would have to look into that.
Yeah, cool.
I'm sure there is, I just don't know.
Pretty interesting. Like, I think I think I told you yesterday, the cool thing about this is that it gives you an idea and then you chew through it like this, and you think about it, and then you're more likely to observe it in yourself and therefore be able to take control of that process than if you didn't chew through it and observe it.
Yes, for sure.
Let's go to aphorisms.
Yeah. Whichever one you wanted to do first.
Yeah, I'm just going through the order you gave me. I'm slowly putting them in. So 59.
Yeah, I've read them all, so I know what's
Oh, okay.
offhand.
What? I had no idea what he was talking about here.
59. Let me look at that really quick. I had it open. 59. Yeah. This one is one of the more peculiar ones. Why did I mention this one?
Well, I'm interested in a couple of things here. So wisdom lying in the superficiality of men. I'm interested in the cult of surfaces, like, and then reaching beneath them with disastrous results. I was interested in.
Well, he begins by saying exaggerated worship of pure forms, which is Platonism, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So like a pure form, something beyond things, and we're sense that much in need of them.
He's comparing, so when he's talking about the superficiality of men, he's thinking of men who don't think much.
I think so. What's that side? With disastrous results. Surfaces being, what's the cult of surfaces?
Like geometrical figures, maybe something like that.
Probably.
Referenced.
Yeah, maybe something like that, or surface level as well. And near the cult of superficiality, we could say, must it someday reach beneath them with disastrous results. In a way, he's saying that the people in that Platonic world, at one point they looked underneath what was true or what was they were founded on. They saw something terrifying or something destructive, so they ignored it and just stayed on that level of the forms, I guess. So
What
in
do
a
you?
way, he's saying that.
Sorry, go.
Go ahead. Like in a
What
way, he's
would they
saying
see? Oh no, you go.
that they're just thinking about their little pet theories, and they're too afraid to admit the truth of their beliefs or the true implications. So anybody who does that is superficial. Yeah, he describes it as burnt children.
Right.
And now they only want to falsify what they've thought of. They only falsify everything. That they only falsify what they see in life. Because what they see in life is terrifying to them. That's what's underneath the pure forms. So they want to be in the world of pure forms. And they do that by falsifying reality, falsifying the image of reality in some way or another.
So he's saying everyone who's like this Platonic type must have at some point seen things that contradict these surfaces or forms or abstractions they're holding, and they ignored that. Is that sort of what he's getting at? And they're like, all right, let me just stick with the surfaces.
Yeah, because they see something disastrous underneath it.
Yeah.
So they ignore it. Whatever disastrous is in their eyes, they just don't bother to look.
And falsifying images is a long-winded revenge on life.
Yeah, you're falsifying everything through those pure forms. And in a way, Platonism is anti-life because it's not grounded in life and living on earth or living on reality. Well, not necessarily reality, but each way would say more like on earth or something to that effect. So yeah, you're taking the revenge on. You're almost against life. You're anti-life. You're anti like powerful power in oneself, things like that.
And the degree to which life has been spoiled for them might be inferred from the degree to which they see its image falsified, thinned down, transcendentalized, deified. Is that a claim that the stronger the belief in some false image or idea, the more they despise life and the more that they have kind of a bitterness towards things in the world?
Well, at least to the degree they want to see life falsified, like in a way that they want life to be seen as this Platonic image. That's something that they don't even see, that's the falsified image, that Platonic form, which Nietzsche says thinned down. As we've said before, is like his idea that Platonic forms are relatively empty of content, but there's nothing to them, that they're empty and meaningless, or to make them transcendental or to make them into God-like things. That's what they seek to do. They wish to do that because that's the way they spoil life, by making those images, the religious images in particular.
And then it is the profound suspicious fear of an incurable pessimism that forces the whole millennia to bury their teeth in and cling to a religious interpretation of existence. So he's saying that someone who has looked at life and is afraid will then cling his teeth into these images.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're afraid of the senses in a way, fear the instinct which senses them one might get hold to the truth too soon, or the instinct which senses. Yeah, they're afraid of trying to get a hold of the truth in a direct way, in a artistic way, in a strong way. They don't want that. They're scared of it. So the Platonic forms are a way to cling to something that they can understand, or what they wish life to be. That Platonic, taken away from life, detached from life.
That ties into the Brandon quote. If I die by
Yes.
my own hand, at least I'm still in control.
Yes.
Spare myself the anxiety of waiting for destruction
Yes.
from an unknown. Oh, interesting. Okay.
I would say so.
What is it actually about that then? Like, okay, so you think you're doomed, and so you'd rather be doomed because if you're not doomed, you're out of control. What is the sense of being out of control? Is it what I was saying before? Is it like the unknown, or like
I
maybe
would
I'm
guess
not
the
doomed? But
unknown.
how is that? Okay.
I would guess the unknown myself. It could be the contrast of certainty versus wonder, I guess, in a way. Like, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but
I
yeah,
wonder
it's
if
just the
it's
uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. That's usually just a common thing, I think.
but
Certainty is assertive calmness.
it's not true because I don't know what some boy in China is doing right now, but it doesn't make me uncomfortable. So there's more to it than that. There is something to it, but there's more than just uncertainty, right?
Probably more to it. And that's, yeah, I'm sure there's more.
What?
I mean, like you have to get, I think getting account of like fear, for example, like this. I mean, doing an analysis of fear alongside that feeling of wanting certainty could help. Like if you feel fearful of something because you don't know, then making sure you know is a way to get rid of that fear. But another way you could be fearful is that the certainty that things will go a specific way, you don't like that to be so sure. That almost certainty itself, it could be scary because it forces things to be a certain way. But you'd feel more comfortable with total chaos and uncertainty, that there are no consequences to anything. I mean, that's a weird thing that could happen, but that is a possibility, I guess.
What about in the case of being in control, as this Brandon quote is, and this relates to the religious person? It's not necessarily fear of the what will happen, but it's more a fear of like, who am I, and what have I done, and what do I need to change about myself, and where have I gone wrong, where's my guilt, all that kind of stuff. Because maybe there's a lot of implied, I don't know, in this new discovery that you've made that contradicts your knowledge, there's a lot of other doubts that come up, right, implicitly, just like in philosophies.
I think guilt has to do with a lot of the Brandon type, that type of feeling that he was describing, which is more like Christian, a result of like a Protestant Christian outlook, I think. And that's more very American kind of reaction, I think. And that's his perspective he's coming from, I think. Where it would be guilt in religion that is describing the source of that discomfort, whatever it is.
The fear of that instinct, which senses that one might get hold of the truth too soon, before man has become strong enough, hard enough, artist enough. The fear of that instinct.
I mean, it's just, I think he means just that where you sense of something that is getting hold of the truth. It's just a sense. Nietzsche's describing me like a getting hold of truth as an instinctual thing. But he's saying that people are afraid sometimes to attain that truth, or they want to ignore it, or look the other way, or evade it, to use other terms. Right. You just look the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nietzsche's saying that religion is a consequence of the fear of truth, actually. He's saying piety is rooted in fear. That's really what he's getting at. Fear of the truth. Which is right. It's like, it's like that, the Brandon thing we're discussing, that those people are afraid of the truth. So they make their truth into something that they believe rather than based in reality. They take what they wish to be true as a truth rather than the truth. When they have a choice in a contradiction, they go with the primacy of consciousness instead.
And then he says that this whole approach has been developed so much in beautifying man that he can find ways to escape through turning himself into, like, he can find ways to escape into art and all these abstractions and play of colors, as he says, and graciousness. So there's so much in there that he can use it as an escape. That's sort of what I got from the end.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
This quote.
It's almost like an irony, though, he's pointing out that it's ironic that despite all that fear of truth, sometimes art was the result of religion, even. It's almost ironic. Like, we could even think of so much music, so much artistry, so much poetry is rooted in religion.
Right.
But Nietzsche's saying that that was an escape from religion. They weren't actually glorifying religion, maybe, but they were describing, they were something else. They're the escape from that suffering, or that pain, or whatever you want to call it.
This is from Six Pillars as well.
Okay.
There's only really one part that's this thing.
Yeah, joy is the motor, for sure.
But isn't it the case that you do have to prove your worth? Like, it is by actually attaining things in the world that you prove your worth. It's I don't really get, maybe he's using it in a different sense. Like, you do have to prove you're enough. You don't just, he even says this, so this is why I didn't get it. Like, you're not just born with self-esteem. You don't just tell yourself look yourself in the mirror and blow yourself kisses, as he says. So
Yeah.
So what's the distinction here between, like, prove versus, I mean, you do have to prove. So yeah.
I mean, I don't think you need to prove that. My aim is to prove. Live where possibilities, not prove your worth. I mean, it would seem like you don't need to prove that you should seek it, that you deserve seeking happiness. Because I don't even think it's a question of deserving. It's just a matter of whether what's possible to get there. It's not a question of would deserve the esteem as much as. I mean, that's not the question. It's not, do you deserve happiness? Well, deserve is the wrong way to look at it, even.
Okay.
Like, everybody, that's like your moral goal. That's, everybody deserves, in the sense that that is all of our goal. That is what we all should aim for. That happiness, or that life as end in itself. We should aim for life. And it's not that, yeah, we're not trying to justify it, but yeah, you might need to demonstrate that you're worth a particular value. But self-esteem is more to do with what's possible, that you can attain these things with the right effort and work. And that you do have that capability if you have the capability. But I think self-esteem is more rooted in recognizing your ability to do things, not necessarily that you need to get, that something is owed to you or anything like that.
So just in a very basic fundamental sense, you have a mind, you can do some things, you don't know what yet, but you can do some. And then you're also worthy of happiness just for existing. Not worthy, but you're able to strive for happiness. Just, that's what he's talking about, that you don't prove. And then the rest you do need to prove, right? Because, like, just because you have a mind and you can think doesn't mean you're going to become a PhD in physics or going to be produce any, so
yeah.
He must be talking about some very basic fundamental thing then.
Yeah, I think so. Because he's saying, live out our possibilities. Our purpose is self-expression. So it's not to prove that we should self-express or find our possibilities, but that is the basis to our self-esteem. Recognizing what's possible to us,
right,
and recognizing how to express or seek out what our nature.
Let me try. I'm just going to bring up some. We'll go to another aphorism, but then I'll bring up some economic stuff just to see if it's worth going over in future.
I think, wait, what number did you get up to for the aphorisms? For recording them?
107, but I'm going through page by page and I'll just, it'll take us a while to get through them anyway. So
were you retyping them?
No, I have the book on my Kindle. So what I did was I hate images because I can't edit and stuff like that. So I just went, every time you put up a page, I'd put it up in my Kindle and I just copy. Yeah, it'd be a massive waste of my time to do that. Yes. No, I didn't do it. Yeah. Okay. Go to an aphorism and then we'll come back to this, which I've just prepared. Okay. Whoever is a teacher through and through takes all things seriously only in relation to his students, even himself. I didn't find that particularly interesting or great. It just makes me think of, all right, have a purpose, keep that purpose in mind. That's all that comes to my mind when I read this.
Yeah. I don't think there's much to that one either.
Yeah, seemed kind of bland. Knowledge for its own sake, that is the last snare of morality. With that, one becomes completely entangled in it once more. That I don't get it.
Well, he thinks morality is like almost holding people back. So there's that. Knowledge in and of itself, like the detached, disinterested type of knowledge he's saying, that's the last thing we have to get rid of. But then when you get rid of that, you're then entangled in it again. Why would you be? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get why you'd be entangled it once more.
Oh, no. Okay. So it's the last snare of morality, whatever that means. And then that's it's like the final boss. Like, but with that, on that boss, he just throws you back to level 1. You get entangled in morality again. But I still don't really get what he's talking.
I mean, snare, he thinks that morality is, or a backwards way of thinking, that it holds us back from what we can be. That's why he's called beyond good and evil. He wants to get beyond morality, that there's questions more important than that. It's not about being good or evil. It's about something more, like power within oneself and things like that. And he thinks morality is just that weaker way of thinking, old-fashioned way of thinking. That's all.
What does that have to do with knowledge for its own sake?
Well, he's saying like getting rid of Kantian ways of thinking, because he always hates Kant. He mentions Kant and hates him. So knowledge for its own sake is something, an old way of thinking that's no good. And we should get rid of it. Okay.
Because Kant ensnared everyone back into morality.
Look at it that way, yeah. Or whatever moralizer you can think of. Any religious teacher even. Because they're all into Platonic stuff and detached, disinterested knowledge.
Okay, some random economics questions. I've got the little paragraph and then questions about it. You may not know, and that's fine. I'm just saying, because I got tons of these. So if you know, then we can continue the discussions on them.
Yeah.
So is this something that, I guess, do you think this is an accurate characterization of the difficulty of economics, that you've got what he described as special pleading of self-interested actors?
Yeah, I think that is pretty common, that people claim that their interests are in some way special or more important or more fundamental than another. That, I mean, let's say somebody's arguing about, say, the coal industry, and another person's arguing about the microchip industry. one person might argue that like, oh, my industry is more important because of XYZ, you should pay more attention. Or somebody's saying banks are more important
Right.
than say, I don't know, food, like chair manufacturing or something. I don't know. Things like that.
And what is it about? Like, okay, so there's pleading of special self-interested actors. And what is it about economics that makes this unique to economics? And why don't you have self-pleading, self-interested actors in every other field, in psychology and physics? And is it because the results?
Well, I don't think it's saying that they're bad, that these special interests are necessarily, that having those interests is bad, as much as somebody trying to claim that one special interest is of more importance without it, just in terms of the economic system. I mean, they're just trying to say that trading with microchips is inherently better than trading with coal or whatever. It's trying to say that, well, if economics is entire system of trade of many actors seeking many different things, then it wouldn't really make sense to say that one really needs to take precedence, or even argue that one takes precedence is very difficult. It's more significant in economics because there's so many more moving parts and so many other values involved that we have to determine, like, why is one better than the other? Why does one matter more than the other?
Is the root of the whole issue here, though, that the fact that the result, I wrote this down, the results of thought can't immediately be proven by experiment. It's not like you can go, you know, in physics, you'd have some group of people saying, well, we believe in this physics is better for us, but it's irrelevant, because all that's relevant is, can you produce a result in an experiment? Can you apply the theory? Whereas here, it's like, it's less clear, right? You apply a policy, you can't really see every impact of that policy immediately.
Not necessarily experiment, but just that it's human action. Many human actors interacting. It's not just a science of things that don't think. Right. These are people with like infinite varieties of values and pursuits that we can't just reduce every economic thing to an equation, or just to, oh, this industry and that's everything.
Right.
Like everything follows from this industry. No, there's many industries operating at once with many actors with their own interests. It's not like within medicine where the interests of doctors really describes the science, or that engineering is described by the value pursuits of different engineers. The very nature of economics is how people pursue values in a system.
So it's the complexity. Well, I mean, all complexity can be reduced to principles, right? But it's, in this case, where economics is at now, it's the complexity of handling all these different human agents and their values and actions. And that makes it kind of like, I don't know, for whatever reason, where it's at now, it's difficult to manage.
Even if you knew every fact and all the relevant principles to get a good idea what happens, like any modification to it is very sensitive to little changes.
Right.
And that's kind of the more important point, that even the slightest change can make a huge difference in the entire economic system. It's not as easy to see either as other sciences, because there's so much about human values that it varies quickly and easily.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be foolish to think you could grab a few principles and say, aha, I know what I can do to change the system. I'll set these laws in place and we'll all be rich. It never works like that. It's always failed when it was tried.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back to an aphorism. This one is interesting.
So much.
Yeah, that kind of threw me off. It threw me off. I was like, what? That's like the reverse of what I expected.
Yeah.
So people pursue knowledge for the shame it offers them, which is that's
or overcoming the shame. That you need to overcome it.
okay.
Oh wait, rejection would be small. But did not have to overcome.
Yeah, what you said, if one did to overcome the
Yeah, you're
shame
right.
is what the attraction is.
The technology is great because you have to overcome the shame. Wow, that's odd. So much shame. Why would shame? Maybe he's describing the guilt people feel all the time. That they seek things out of guilt. It's almost like what he's saying. Very peculiar.
Yeah. It is very peculiar. Oh, I don't know, maybe you believe something and you're pursuing something else, and then you might feel a sense of shame. Like if you're religious and then you start pursuing science and naturalist philosophy, there might be a sense of shame that lingers as you pursue more and more knowledge until it disappears completely. Something like that.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Would be great. The attraction would be great if one had to overcome much shame. Oh, the attraction of knowledge would be great if one had to overcome much shame. And maybe, I'm not even sure. Seems like knowledge, he's saying, the attraction is based on overcoming. Not entirely sure.
Yeah.
65A is interesting.
We'll do another one, yeah. One is most dishonest to one's God. He's not allowed to sin.
He's not allowed to sin. God is not allowed to sin.
Oh, is he talking about God or the
I
person?
think so.
The person who's
I'm not sure.
If he talked about God, it would be a capitalized C, right?
I wonder if that's actually wordplay.
Oh, okay.
He is not like who's the he? He is not allowed to sin. One is the most dishonest. He's not allowed to sin. I'm not sure. But it's almost like or it could be saying that God says, you're not allowed to sin, but he still does. He says, don't sin. Oh, I will sin sometimes. Like this thing is dishonest. You're acting against what he's commanded in a way that like even the possibility of being, of sinning is like a dishonesty towards God. Like I'm not sure, but
me neither.
It's like you're being dishonest to him, to God. Dishonest to God. Yeah.
Let's go to this. It sort of actually relates to this about proving your worth. So self-efficacy is not the certainty that we will be able to master any and every challenge that life presents. It is the conviction that we are capable in principle of learning what we need to learn, and that we are committed to doing our rational and conscientious best to master the task and challenges entailed by our values. Well, yeah, I don't get, these seem pretty close. Like to have self-efficacy is not mastering any challenge, and yet it's mastering whatever we need. Like that doesn't seem to match up for me. Like I would think that if you have some sense of self-efficacy, it's based on mastering actual things and generalizing from them that you can master other things. It's not the we are capable of learning. Like I don't really get, I don't get the distinction here. It's like, it seems pretty close to me. Like you would need to think you're capable of mastering a lot of different challenges.
Well, he's saying master tasks and challenges entailed by our values. I guess he's saying there's things you could master, not entailed by your values. seems to me that's what he's saying. And the self-efficacy is about the things that matter to you. I mean, I probably wouldn't master something to do with,
Right.
I don't know, calculus, but it's not really much entailed by my values. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't
Okay.
do much for my values, and I don't, by not being able to master it right now. Well, I guess I could. I guess you could look at it that way, but it's not related to my values. It doesn't matter
Right.
whether I could or couldn't, or whether it's in my skill set.
Right. Okay. All right. That makes sense, that interpretation. So it's not about like, Louis, you're not going to be, sorry, it's too late for you to send rocket ships into space and develop new fusion fuel technology, but that's irrelevant to you, right? Like it's not, you're pursuing other values. And so self-efficacy is, can you not master any and every challenge presented by life to any single person, but it's can you learn what you need to learn for your own tasks and challenges, which, like you said, entailed by values. Okay, cool. That makes much more sense. All right, and then it comes down to how you select your values, and maybe that's a process of expression and discovery.
Yes, it is.
Cool. You know, I actually quite like. I find Brandon a little more messier in like he just gives lots of examples, whereas Leonard is much more like, it's much more well organized. But I do quite like all these different psychological examples that he gives for everything he
gives
does.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
He gives a lot of examples. He's got that experience in psychiatry.
Right. And
makes a difference.
I like that a lot. Yeah, it adds a lot. The inclination to depreciate himself, to let himself be robbed, lied to, and taken advantage of, could be the modesty of a god among men.
That's just straight up making fun of Christianity.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's like, oh, you let yourself get robbed, lied, and everything. It's like, oh, I'm just a humble person. I love God. That's it. That's like what Nietzsche said. Like, that's the sign of weakness. The weak man is the Christian man.
Right. Love of one is a barbarism, for it is exercised at the expense of all others. The love of God too.
Yeah, that's just.
You love God, you hate people. What?
Like, well, it's being ironic that like loving one person means that's at the expense of people, literally.
Right.
Like loving means, but it's just wordplay, I think.
Okay. All right, because you're supposed to love everyone, but so if you love one only, you're a barbarian, and yet to love God is just as barbarous.
Something like that. Some of these things is just like, if you were a stand-up comedian, it'd just be a one-liner.
Right.
And some things have made me laugh when I read Nietzsche, like I have laughed.
Let's go to this one and we'll see. We probably won't finish it, but that's okay. We'll just do some of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it, I actually looked into this and thought there's a couple of things in here later, which is just in general, I think we discussed this, the inability to reason abstractly and then trust in that reason because of skepticism. It's hard to be, I think Leonard formulated something like, you can't be loyal. Like if you're not loyal to anything in theory, you can't be loyal to anything in practice. So if you don't have belief in your knowledge and your process of reason, then yeah, you're just not going to follow it at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a broader fallacy there, but I think that's just an inability to reason. But keeping the context, maybe something like that. I don't know if that's a fallacy, but not context dropping.
Yeah. Well, context dropping is a fallacy, as we say, an informal fallacy.
All right.
You're just looking at just the, I don't know, just one particular event or one particular industry rather than the system, that
Yeah.
would be wrong. Or it could
Right.
be when people are trying to find one equation, for example, to explain the entire thing. It's that, but there's so many moving parts, you can't reduce it to a single concept. There's not like the theory of everything for economics. There's many equations and many principles to take into account, not just a single one that everything reduces to. And that's would be an error of rationalism to reduce everything to one abstraction.
Okay, so why do men see the immediate effects? I would just answer now, sort of not in a very detailed way, but just say perceptual level mentality. And then the question is, does this weakness occur in any other fields? Like, what about the sciences? What about the sciences, psychology, physics, maths? Like, can you still get the same inability to?
Yes,
You
I would
can?
say so.
Okay.
I was like, if you look at evolution, because that's such a complex process, I would think that some scientists over focus on a single, say, observation or a single animal to deduce something rather than more creative exploration of interlocking systems in animals and species. I think some scientists are too narrow on what they study rather than studying an ecosystem for evolution.
Right.
They're looking at specifically like genetic lineage and maybe deliberately ignoring something else. I think some scientists do, and I think even in psychology, they might focus all on like, oh, how does the mind compute specific, I don't know, visual forms, rather than looking at an entire system of the mind that takes into account, say, the motor system and the emotional system, like reasoning and the visual system, memory system, integrating all those together. So yeah, there's still theorists that stick to maybe one theory too much rather than look at it broadly speaking, which is what you should do. Broad is better because there are so many moving parts.